Hello everybody. I wanted to talk to you today about an interesting relationship I had with a customer of mine who I found out some interesting news about this morning. When I first opened my business about 2 years ago, things were very slow going at the start, and I had one guy, his name was Bob, who just loved me. He came into the store probably at least 2 to 3 times a week. He was a very, very nice man, and he was a very, very religious man. He had suffered a lot of illness in his life, and he and I would converse a lot. We would talk about life in general. We would talk about, how things are going for him. He talked about his church a lot, and I usually just let him talk. I wouldn't really contribute to the conversation all that much because I didn't really feel it was appropriate, me being an atheist, and I know that I knew how he felt about his church. You see, he felt that his church had actually healed him. He would come in here and in various stages of wellness. Sometimes he'd come in here and he was doing great, and he had a very nice guitar, and he would have me work on it or whatever. Other times he would come in here and he'd be very crouched over, and he'd use the stools in the front of my shop as like a walker. But he was a very good man, and he even brought a lot of business to my shop. He got his pastor and the youth pastor, who all play guitar, and a few other people from his congregation there to come and give my store a try. And I was very appreciative of that. I would say I'd really like to sell this $5,000 guitar right here. And he'd say, okay, let me get all the specifics on it. I'd like to write this down so that I can include it in my prayer tonight, that I'll pray that this item sells for you. One day, he came into my shop. It was just like any other day, and he wasn't doing all that well. He didn't seem right, and he began to talk to me, and he'd asked me several times before, because he'd heard me play guitar and whatever, and he'd asked me several times before to come and play for the church that he belonged to. And I had always told him I'm not really interested, and we kind of left it at that. But this time, he asked, "Do you mind if I ask why wouldn't you want to do that?" I said, "Because I really just don't feel very comfortable in religious settings like that." And he said, "Oh, why not?" I said, I'd really like not to get into it if it's all right with you. And he's like, "Oh, I'm a very understanding person. I'm just curious as to what your religious views are." And I said, "Okay." And I explained to him that I'm an atheist and that I used to be Jewish, and how I kind of arrived at my position. And he was very understanding. He listened very closely. And we started kind of having this conversation, this back and forth conversation about how we arrived at our religiousness. And it became very clear to me that he was religious because of his medical problems. He never outright said it, but I kind of always had the feeling that he was kind of knocking on heaven's door, as it were, and that I think he was afraid. But he did say that he arrived at his faith, and he found Jesus, as he put it, and the preacher was able to heal him. After 10 years of being hunched over and crouched over, he was finally able to walk upright again. and he felt that that was a miracle. He didn't push it any further. I mean, he was a very understanding man, and we had a very nice talk and a good relationship, a good enough relationship where we were able to respect each other's views on things. And we left that conversation just kind of like that. We just said, well, to each his own, and I hope things go well for both of us. I saw him once or twice after that, and then I didn't see him again. I haven't seen him again since. And the last time I saw him was probably about 6-7 months ago. And I found out this morning that he, in fact, did pass away about 5 months ago. And, which, I kind of had thought that that might have been the case, but I didn't know. It just kind of makes me think about everything and about him as a person, because he was a very, very good man, regardless of his faith. But it seems to me that it was just, I almost feel bad for him. I feel bad for the way he was forced to live the last several months or year or whatever of his life, which is essentially in fear. And he clung on to this religious belief as a result of it. And that's not atypical. That happens to a lot of people. It's just something I'd never really seen before, and I've never really known somebody who was like that. And I'd like to say that I knew him well enough to know that probably in his youth he was stronger than that. But when you're living with a life-debilitating disease or other medical problems that are almost assuredly terminal, and things are so rough for you, you need some sort of comfort. You need some sort of external source to help lift you up. The thing is, though, that I can't imagine that if you become faithful because of the fear of death, knowing that death will come, I can't imagine that even having faith truly eliminates that fear. And sadly, I don't know, but I would guess that the last few days for Bob were not so great. I would imagine that he was very afraid. And if there is one thing that I do not want when I die, I don't want to be afraid. And that's really why I feel bad for him. But on the other hand, maybe it wasn't like that. Maybe his faith really did comfort him to the core. Maybe his life was a little bit longer because of his faith, and maybe his death was a little less fearful as a result of his faith. I just thought I would share this story with you guys. Yeah, if anybody has anything to say about it, I'd be curious to hear. Here's to you, Bob. You will be missed, and you will be remembered. Thoughtful Atheist, out.